I think one of the strangest experiences a human being can go through is realising that certain moments divide your life into before and after. Before you saw it. And certainly after, you could never unsee it again. Some experiences don't just hurt you. They alter the way you permanently see life. And I don't think people talk about that enough, sadly. Because not all pain heals by returning to who you were before. We've discussed this. Some pain changes the architecture, like permanently. Some experiences shift perception so deeply that the old version of you cannot fully return. And maybe it was never supposed to. I think that's why some people become quieter over time. They're not colder or disconnected or emotionless. They just become aware of how fragile people can be, aware of how quickly life can change, aware of how much human behaviour is driven by fear, pain, insecurity, loneliness, conditioning and survival. Aware of how temporary almost everything really is. Once certain awareness arrives, the nervous system can never quite interpret the world the same way again. Some forms of awareness cannot be reversed. That's the truth of it. You can distract yourself. You can suppress it. You can drown it in noise. Dopamine, work, substances, performance, relationships, ambition, social validation. But deep down, once you truly see something clearly, part of you changes permanently. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's betrayal. Sometimes it's loss. Sometimes it's seeing human nature clearly for the first time. Sometimes it's surviving something you never thought you would survive. Sometimes it's realising the world is not nearly as stable, safe, or emotionally honest as you once believed. And there's a grief that comes with that awareness. Not dramatic grief, quiet grief. The kind that changes how you sit with life internally. The kind that changes your relationship with noise, with conflict, with ego, with people, hell, with yourself as well, right? I think that's why awareness can become lonely for a while. Because once your perception changes, you start noticing things you didn't notice before. You notice how much performance exists in modern life. How many conversations are masked. How many people are exhausted beneath their personalities. And how many identities are maintained through fear of rejection. How many people are silently carrying pain they never learned how to process? And strangely, the more clearly you begin seeing people, the harder it becomes to hate them simplistically. Because you start recognising wounds underneath behaviour, conditioning underneath reaction, fear underneath control, and loneliness underneath performance. Again, that doesn't excuse harmful behaviour, but awareness complicates judgment. You stop seeing life in simple black and white categories. And sometimes that complexity becomes emotionally heavy because awareness removes innocence. There's a version of life you can only experience before certain realisations arrive. Before betrayal teaches caution. Before grief teaches impermanence. Before suffering teaches humility. And before silence teaches reflection. Before survival teaches perspective. And once those doors open internally, they do not fully close again. It's just the way it works. I think this is why some people slowly detach from constant social validation, because internal peace starts becoming more valuable than social belonging. That's a huge shift. Especially built in a world around attention, performance, noise, and identity projection. Some people spend their whole lives trying to be accepted by environments that quietly destroy their nervous systems. But that awareness changes that equation. Eventually you stop asking, how do I fit into this world? And you start asking, what actually protects my peace? And you see, that question changes lives. Because the answer is rarely more noise, more proving, more performance, more chaos, more emotional reactivity. Usually it's less pretending, less attachment, less unconscious behaviour, less chasing, more honesty, more stillness, more observation, ultimately more alignment. And I think that's one of the strongest outcomes of painful awareness. It can initially isolate you before eventually bringing you closer to yourself. That's the part nobody explains. Awareness can feel like grief before it feels like clarity. Because part of you mourns the old world you used to believe in, the simpler world, the emotionally safer world, the world before certain realisations arrived. But eventually, if you stay long enough with it, something else begins emerging underneath the grief. Acceptance. Not passive acceptance. Not weakness. Just deep understanding. An understanding that life is fragile. People are complicated. Pain changes behaviour. Fear shapes personality. And peace becomes incredibly precious. That's why some people stop needing to speak so loudly. Not because they have nothing left to say, but because life itself taught them something words struggle to explain. That awareness matters. That peace matters. One of my all-time favourites, that nervous system protection matters. And that certain experiences once lived become part of your perception forever.